Have you ever seen those headlines and, two massive companies merging, or maybe one sort of swallows another one whole, and you're sitting there wondering what is actually going on behind the scenes? We see it constantly, these corporate giants joining forces or one buying out a rival. And almost always what we're talking about is mergers and acquisitions. M&A, now look, merger and acquisition, people tend to use them interchangeably, right, in just everyday chat. But like most things in the business world, there are really crucial differences, nuances, and some fascinating strategies behind it all. So our mission today for this deep dive isn't just to give you dictionary definitions. We want to pull back the curtain a bit. We'll look at the different types of M&A, why companies actually go through all the trouble, and importantly, the kind of surprising upsides and the often underestimated downsides. We're going to unpack some real-world examples, too, to really get into the thinking behind these huge moves that literally reshape industries. Before we dive deeper, just a quick reminder that this deep dive is based on material from Farhat lectures. All content, examples, and explanations discussed here are derived from the comprehensive accounting resources at farhatlectures.com. Whether you're an accounting student, CPA candidate, or professional, definitely visit the website for additional practice questions, video lectures, and detailed support to reinforce today's topic. Special thanks to Professor Farhat for providing this valuable material. Okay, so let's get straight to it then. When we talk M&A, people often lump merger and acquisition together. What's the fundamental difference, the one that strategists really care about? Because it's got to be more than just words, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It is. I mean, yeah, both end up with a bigger company, but the legal stuff, the structure underneath, totally different. So in the purest sense, a merger, that's when two, maybe more businesses combine and they form one brand new entity. It's less like buying, more like a strategic recreation. Both original companies technically disappear and something new emerges. Think of it like a full identity reboot for both. It's pretty complex. In acquisition, though, that's different. That's where one company, the acquirer, buys most or all of another company, the target, usually by buying up shares to get control. In this case, the acquirer's identity mostly stays the same, right? And the target becomes like a subsidiary, it gets folded into a division. Think Facebook buying Instagram or Microsoft getting LinkedIn. Microsoft is still Microsoft.
Got it. So one's more like joining forces, the other's clearly a takeover. But, I mean, these deals sound incredibly complex, often risky, too. Why do companies even bother? What's the big strategic push behind taking these kinds of huge risks?
Well, yeah, it sounds like a massive job, and honestly, it often is. But the reasons behind it are usually pretty compelling from their perspective. It's not always just about getting bigger, though that's part of it. Companies jump into M&A to, say, expand their reach into new places, or maybe to aggressively push into totally new market segments, or sometimes just to grab more market share where they already are. A big driver often is cutting costs, finding efficiencies, or maybe getting their hands on specific tech or patents or even talented people they can't easily build up themselves. Really, the sort of secret sauce they're after is a competitive edge, whether that's being the biggest player, the most efficient, or having the coolest innovations.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so we've got the basic difference down, merger versus acquisition. Now let's get into strategy. What's maybe the most common type we see? The most straightforward, maybe? Like, are we talking about two companies that are basically duking it out in the same market and then suddenly decide, hey, let's team up?
Exactly. That sounds spot on, like a horizontal combination. You might also hear it called a horizontal merger or horizontal integration. This happens when a company merges with or acquires another company that's playing at the same level in the industry. Like you said, usually direct competitors, offering similar stuff, similar services. The main goal here, usually economies of scale, that's the big prize, producing way more, so the cost per item drops way down. And of course, reducing competition is a huge factor. They also want to expand their product lines maybe and definitely increase their market share, sometimes creating something close to a monopoly. A really classic example. Think back to Exxon and Mobil in '99. Oil giants, direct competitors. They merged, became ExxonMobil, one of the biggest in the world. That totally changed the game in energy.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that one. So, okay, if you're a company looking for that kind of dominance, it almost seems like a no-brainer. But what are the real wins?
Yeah.
And what are the big headaches? Because merging with your direct rival can't possibly be easy.
No, it's definitely not all smooth sailing. The upsides are tempting, though. Economies of scale, like I said, that's huge. Produce more with the same fixed costs, lower operating costs. Hard for smaller guys to compete with that. This naturally leads to increased market share and power, more clout over pricing, potentially higher profits, like we touched on. You can get close to a quasi-monopoly, which really shakes up an industry. And then there's the promise of synergy. combining resources, maybe R&D, tech from both sides.
Yeah.
You hope it leads to better efficiency or innovations neither could manage alone.
Okay, but the downsides. Because I imagine regulators must watch these deals like hawks.
Oh, absolutely. That's a big one. Horizontal mergers often face intense regulatory oversight. Antitrust laws are there specifically to prevent monopolies. Governments, the SEC, they often block these deals or put really strict conditions on them. They worry less competition means higher prices and fewer choices for consumers. Then you have massive integration challenges. Just imagine trying to mash together two companies with totally different cultures, different ways of doing things, different computer systems. It's notoriously tough. It often leads to unhappy employees, lower productivity, maybe even key people leaving. And yeah, this is often the painful part to get those cost savings, those economies of scale. There are often job losses. Redundancies get cut. That hits morale hard. And it has wider social impacts too. It's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about merging people and processes without breaking everything. Way harder than it looks.
Right. So that's
Wow.
going wide, joining with a rival. But what if a company wants to go deeper? Control more of its own process from start to finish? Not just competitors, but like the whole journey of its product.
Yeah.
That's vertical integration, isn't it?
Precisely.
Okay.
Yeah, vertical integration. That's a strategy where a company basically takes control over multiple stages of its own production process. So that could mean buying businesses further up or down their supply chain, everything from getting raw materials to manufacturing, distribution, even the final retail sale. We
Okay.
sometimes talk about upstream or backward integration, that's like buying a supplier,
Mm.
or downstream, forward integration, maybe buying a distributor or retailer. Apple is like the textbook example, right? They design the products, they oversee the manufacturing, they market them, and then they sell them directly in their own stores and online. That gives them incredible control from the first idea right into the customer's hands. Control over the supply chain, quality, costs, the whole experience.
Okay, but that much control, does it ever backfire? Like, does it make them less flexible? Maybe they miss out on what specialist suppliers are doing?
That's a really key question. The advantages are pretty clear. You get amazing control over the supply chain. Guarantee supply, you can manage quality tightly, and often save costs by cutting out the middleman's profit. Having that direct line of sight R&D to consumer lets you react faster to problems, improve things constantly, better coordination between stages.
Makes-
But yeah, the drawbacks are significant. One is reduced focus. If you're spreading your management and resources thin across all these different stages, you might lose focus on what you're actually best at. Your core business could make you less agile. You also take on increased risk because now you're exposed to problems at every single stage. Like, what if raw material prices shoot up? That's your problem now. And you hit on a big one. Limited flexibility. Being locked into your own internal operations can make it really hard to adapt if, say, a cheaper or better external supplier pops up, or if some nimble specialist innovates faster than your internal teams. And lastly, doing this usually requires a large investment. Buying or setting up all those different parts of the chain costs a lot of capital, time, and resources. So yeah, while Apple shows the power of control, the risk is getting too stuck in your own ways, maybe missing out on outside innovation.
Okay, so we've done going broad with rivals, going deep with the supply chain. What about when companies get together? And honestly, from the outside, they look completely unrelated. That takes us to circular combination, right? Or what most people probably call a conglomerate merger. What's the play there? What's the logic?
Right, this one's a whole different ballgame. A circular combination or conglomerate merger happens when companies operating in totally different, unrelated industries decide to join up under one management. The main goal usually isn't about market share or supply chains, it's mostly about diversification. The idea is, by spreading out across different sectors, you reduce overall business risk. Don't put all your eggs in one industry basket. Sometimes they also hope to find some unexpected synergies, even if it's not obvious at first. A good example, think back to Walt Disney merging with ABC Television in 1995. Disney was entertainment, theme parks, movies. ABC was a TV network. Pretty different, right? But the combination let Disney diversify its media holdings, and it gave ABC amazing access to Disney's content like cross-promotion.
Okay. So, spreading risk. Looking for maybe some clever cross-marketing stuff. But managing companies in totally different fields sounds incredibly difficult. Where does this strategy tend to fall apart?
That's usually the biggest challenge, yeah. While diversification can definitely help smooth things out if one sector takes a hit, the sheer complexity of management is huge. Trying to oversee a portfolio of really diverse businesses, different industries, different markets, it needs incredibly broad knowledge. It can easily lead to inefficiencies or just bad decisions because management focus is split so many ways. Also, in some places, regulators don't love huge conglomerates, so you can run into regulatory issues about having too much market power or influence, even across unrelated areas. And maybe the biggest risk is the potential for negative synergy. That's where the combined company actually performs worse than the individual parts would have separately. That can happen if management time is spread too thin, resources get allocated badly, or there's just not enough deep understanding of all the different businesses. You end up dragging each other down instead of building value.
Right. Complex stuff. Okay, so if those combinations felt distinct, now we get to a kind of hybrid, the diagonal combination. This sounds like it borrows a bit from horizontal and vertical, is that right?
Yeah.
What exactly is this one?
Yeah, you've nailed the basic idea. A diagonal combination is when a company merges with or acquires another company that provides related but different services, or maybe operates at a related but different stage of the supply chain. So it's not a direct competitor, exactly. And it's not quite a supplier or a customer either. It's more about moving into adjacent spaces that offer complementary skills or markets. The main idea is to leverage synergies by combining these different but related operations. Get a unique edge. A really great modern example is Amazon buying Whole Foods. Amazon.online retail, cloud computing, tech giant, Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Physical grocery stores. They weren't direct competitors in the old sense, but both were in retail, right? Related. Amazon used Whole Foods stores and supply chain for its grocery delivery push. Whole Foods got access to Amazon's logistics, huge customer base, and you started seeing things like Prime benefits in the stores.
That Amazon Whole Foods example really drives it home, combining online power with physical presence. So what are the big pros and cons when companies try this kind of expansion into related but different areas?
Well, the main advantage is definitely the potential to leverage powerful synergies. Combining complementary things can create more value, unique offers for customers. It also offers strategic diversification by adding new related revenue streams, like online plus physical retail. That can spread risk, and ultimately, if you get it right, it can give you a serious competitive advantage, creating integrated services or experiences that your rivals just can't easily copy.
Okay, but what are the pitfalls? Still sounds like integration could be tricky.
Oh, absolutely. You still face integration hurdles. Even if the businesses are related, you're blending different cultures, different ways of operating, maybe different tech systems. That's always complex. There's also the risk of distraction or lack of focus. Pushing into new, even related areas can pull attention and money away from your main business. It definitely leads to increased complexity in management. Running a broader range of operations just requires more sophisticated oversight. And like other big deals, regulators might still step in if they think the combination gives the company too much market power across these related sectors.
Okay, so we've really broken down the why and the what, the types of combinations. But let's shift gears a bit to the how. How does one company actually go about buying another one? Especially maybe if the target company isn't exactly thrilled about being bought. Let's talk about a really direct method, the tender offer. What's that all about?
Right. A tender offer is basically a formal public proposal, usually from one company, saying, hey, shareholders of this other company, we want to buy your shares. They offer to buy a specific number of shares directly from the shareholders, usually at a fixed price per share, often higher than the current market price. The sort of strategic, maybe aggressive part of this is that it tries to go around the target company's management and board, especially if management is saying no deal. It's a direct appeal to the actual owners, the shareholders. If enough of them like the price and sell their shares, the acquiring company gains control, whether management likes it or not.
So it's like taking your case straight to the people, bypassing the leaders. Was there a big example of this? Maybe one that didn't quite pan out even with a big offer?
Oh, yeah. A huge one was Microsoft's attempt to buy Yahoo back in 2008. It was audacious. Microsoft launched this massive $44 billion tender offer, offered something like a 60% premium over Yahoo's share price at the time, really trying to tempt their shareholders. But here's the aha moment. Yahoo's management flat out refused. They argued Microsoft was undervaluing them. And this is key because Yahoo's management and founders held a pretty significant chunk of the shares themselves. Their unified resistance was enough to kill the deal. It really showed that even a huge pile of cash isn't always enough. Corporate culture, pride, management belief, that human element can be a bigger hurdle than just the money. A fascinating case study.
Wow, yeah. That's a powerful lesson right there. Okay, but what if a buyer doesn't want the whole company? Maybe they like the brand name, but not the factories. Or they want the tech, but not the debt. Is there a way to be more selective? Just pick and choose the bits you actually want.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what a purchase of asset allows you to do. In an asset purchase, the buying company acquires only specific assets from the target company, not the whole company entity itself. It lets them be really surgical, pick the things they value, maybe physical stuff like buildings, or intangible things like brand names, patents, customer lists, maybe just one specific division. And crucially, it lets them avoid taking on unwanted liabilities or parts of the business they just don't want. A good example here was Microsoft again, actually, when they bought Nokia's Devices and Services division back in 2013. They didn't buy all of Nokia. They did an asset purchase for just the phone-related bits, leaving the rest of Nokia to focus on its network equipment business.
Okay, so that sounds smart. Get what you need, leave the rest. What are the big pluses of doing it that way? And what are the maybe hidden difficulties? The snags?
The main advantage is that precision, like you said. The
Hmm.
ability to pick exactly which assets you want and, really importantly, structure the deal to limit the liabilities you inherit. That can significantly cut down your legal risk. It's also often, though not always, less expensive and less legally complicated overall than buying the entire corporate structure.
But the downsides?
While the snags can be pretty significant, actually transferring the assets themselves can be surprisingly complex, especially intangible stuff like patents or customer contracts, or if assets have loans or liens attached to them, that needs careful handling. Another key point is you might not get the full benefit of an integrated business. You're just buying pieces. Those pieces might not work as well on their own without the rest of the original company structure supporting them. And also things like employees, customer contracts, important licenses, they don't necessarily just transfer automatically with the assets. You often need separate agreements, more negotiations. That can add unexpected complexity and delays during integration.
Wow, okay. We've really covered a lot of ground here. From the basic difference between mergers and acquisitions, right through the strategic thinking behind horizontal, vertical, circular, and even diagonal combinations, and then digging into the tactics like tender offers and asset purchases. It's clear this stuff is way more than just business jargon. These are the big strategic moves that genuinely shape industries. They influence the prices you pay. They impact jobs. They affect the choices we all have as consumers. It's fascinating stuff.
It really is, and hopefully the next time you see one of those big M&A headlines, you'll have a much better sense of the complex game being played behind the scenes. And thinking about all the challenges we discussed, integration, regulations, the sheer cost, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? What kind of M&A do you think will actually drive real innovation and benefit consumers the most in the years ahead? And which types might end up being, cautionary tales? Another deal that looked great on paper but just didn't deliver in reality. Something to chew on.
Absolutely. Definitely gives you a new lens to look at business news. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of mergers and acquisitions. Getting smart quickly but thoroughly. That's what the deep dive is all about. We hope this conversation leaves you thinking a bit more about the intricate dance of corporate strategy next time you see those headlines.